The OSI teaches that everything in the universe happens according to the grand plan. But the stranger that arrived in Halcyon was an unplanned variable. From the moment he landed in Emerald Vale, his actions altered the course of history. The events on Tartarus brought about the end of the board's authority. But the board's mistakes would haunt the colony for decades to come. The damage they left behind would require the work of a generation to repair. Dr. Phineas Wells began reviving a handful of the Hope's colonists. Engineers, scientists, technicians, and intellectuals. They were among the brightest minds the Earth had ever sent out into the stars. The Hope scientists and engineers woke up in a colony descending headlong into total collapse. With no way to return to Earth, they had no choice but to band together and devote themselves to the cause of saving Halcyon. The people of Halcyon were nothing if not hardy. In the absence of the board's authority, many of the colony's settlements banded together with a single purpose in mind: survival. Life was especially hard in the years to come. Some towns dissolved by attrition and starvation, but most of them found a way to carry on. In the years to come, Halcyon was forced to reckon with its newfound freedom. The board was gone, and for better or worse, the colony was responsible for its own destiny. Left leaderless, the people of Stellar Bay and Amber Heights were slowly but inevitably picked apart by the wildlife of Monarch. Left unchecked, the war on Monarch consumed both MSI and the Iconoclasts. And when the sulfur clouds settled, only stragglers from both factions remained. Some found their way to Sublight, some to Terra 2, and some lived their final years fighting for food in the wilderness. In the end, only the beasts remained. Without Lilia Hagen, Sublight Salvage fell apart. The company fractured, evolving into a series of unregulated criminal gangs, fences, and smugglers. Their facade of legitimacy quickly faded. In time, the Sublight family was forgotten. Over the years, the ruins of Edgewater caused irreversible environmental damage to the landscape of Emerald Vale, owing largely to the presence of toxic compounds in the town's building materials. As for Edgewater's former workers, their remains provided a source of nourishment for the region's fauna, leading to an explosion in the sprat population. The loss of Junlei Tennyson hit the Groundbreaker hard, and even threatened to undercut the ship's independence. Taking up the example of their fallen captain, citizens banded together and rallied anew for the Groundbreaker's autonomy. Junlei was remembered as a folk hero, the spark that ignited a flame, heralding a new age of proud defiance against anyone who would challenge the Groundbreaker's sovereignty. The rediscovery of the Hope and the abandonment of the lifetime employment program forced Byzantium to come to terms with some uncomfortable realities about the state of Halcyon. While Byzantines were reluctant to surrender the luxuries they'd grown accustomed to, the board's diminished authority gave them little choice in the matter. Nearly everyone had to learn to make do with less. Some even had to get jobs. It was a dark time indeed. Even the Gorgone asteroid, though a distant enigma to most of Halcyon, felt the aftershocks of your actions. The Gorgone project created divisions among Wells' newly awakened scientists. Many wanted to let the facility and its failures rot, but others saw an opportunity to improve the work of the original scientists, and perhaps the lives of Halcyon's masses. With no one to champion the project, however, the promise of Adrena time faded, and the Gorgone facilities fell into disuse once more. Lucian Bancroft had high hopes for Project Gorgone. However, the board's fall stripped him of the power and authority he'd wielded for so long. Like many of his peers, he was forced to take up a job based on his meager qualifications. He was relegated to dirt farming in the marauder-infested outskirts of Terra 2. In spite of everything, the Gorgone asteroid remained a sobering reminder of the potential for progress and disaster in humanity's most ambitious efforts. The Rizzo's company in Halcyon dissolved after the collapse of the board. The Eridanos atmospheric complex developed a notorious reputation as a derelict settlement populated by grinning killers. These stories kept the infection safely contained until a group of salvagers braved the complex and stole 20 crates of Spectrum Brown. Inside these crates, long-dormant parasites began to stir. In the absence of board regulation, Spectrum Brown made its way across the colony by passing hands between the desperate, the apathetic, and the lonely. A few settlements tried and failed to ban Spectrum Brown. The drink became a dangerous escape for anyone who dreamed of happier days. Before his untimely death, Captain Alex Hawthorne had plans to restore and modify, for combat purposes, a sanitation and maintenance automechanical that he'd found in a state of disrepair in Emerald Vale's scrapyard. That unit remains broken down and forgotten in the unreliable supply closet to this day. As for Dr. Phineas Wells, he spent his remaining years in his orbital lab. He was never able to come to terms with his own past, troubled by the decision of placing all his faith in the first colonist he ever revived, the infamous Captain of the Unreliable. The revival project yielded mixed results. Phineas, weighed down by limited support and his own guilt, struggled to revive more than a handful of scientists and engineers. They made a heroic effort to solve the colony's problems, but with small numbers and facing long odds, their solutions never caught on. Only a few of the Hope's colonists were successfully revived. Wells died before he could see the fruits of his labor. He passed away a haunted man, crushed by the guilt of his failures. Small, petty factions squabble over what remains of the colony. Every attempt to reach out to Halcyon's neighbors is met with silence. And what about you, the unplanned variable in the history of Halcyon? You brought an end to the chaos on Tartarus, and left Dr. Wells to save Halcyon on his own. You had more pressing matters to attend to. As you tasted your first scoop of Rizzo's partially emulsified, semi-frozen milk-like dessert, you realized something. All your troubles, all your adventures, all your struggles and choices, they had all led to this single moment. And it was all worth it. No one knows what's happened to Earth, and no one knows what the future has in store for Halcyon. All we know for certain is this: the name of the Unreliable and that of its intrepid captain will remain the subject of countless stories for years to come.